Welcome to the HRA, Amanda.
Hi, hello everyone.
This is just Tina. I'm hoping we're on mute. The HRA board meeting hasn't started yet.
I can see you guys. It's kind of like a flashy sound that I'm hearing. That's kind of like fuzzy sound, but I can see you all.
Amanda, can you hear me, Tina Sheldon?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. We'll give them a minute to start.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Nicole, are you ready?
She has a text.
Are you ready?
Hi, yes. I was just telling, yes, I'm ready.
Call the HRA to order. Roll call.
Renmoen,
Here.
Jalali,
Here.
Naker,
Here.
Prince,
Here.
Tao, Yang,
Here.
Tolbert.
Here.
6 present, 1 absent.
And we're going to take these out of order. We're going to start with the executive director's report first. So if you want to read that one, it's not an action item, but go ahead.
Item number 4, SR 2213, Executive Director's Report with guest Amanda Taylor of Greater MSP.
Director Goodman.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert. Can you hear me? Mm-hmm. This is just my second meeting in chambers in person, so I'm making sure that you can hear me fine. This item, Chair Tolbert had requested an update on our region's Build Back Better Regional Challenge Grant application through the federal EDA, which is being managed for our region by Greater MSP. Amanda Taylor, Vice President with Greater MSP, has put countless hours of her time into this application and can likely recite it in her sleep. She is unable to be here in person, but is joining us virtually today to provide an update.
All right, great. And anybody else who might be on this Teams link, you might want to make sure that you're muted. Actually, double check that you're muted because we heard some people earlier on. All right.
Can you guys hear me? This is Amanda.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Yeah. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I'm added to the statistic on COVID cases, unfortunately, this week, but thankfully very mild symptoms, so able to keep working and happy to be with you all today.
Thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Nicole, you want me to jump right in?
Yep, go ahead.
All right, perfect. Can you guys, if I show a slide, would y'all be able to see that, or I can keep it just to talking as well?
We should be able to see it, so go ahead and share it.
Okay, great, we'll do. So as Nicole shared, we've been very busy at Greater MSP working on the Build Back Better Regional Challenge. It is a pretty big undertaking and quite the regional effort, and we're excited to share with you a little bit more about it today. We are in the midst of a sprint to put together an application to US EDA for what is considered phase 2 of the Build Back Better Regional Challenge. And just to be very clear, Build Back Better in this context is a program, one of 6 programs through US EDA from their $3 billion appropriation from the American Rescue Plan. So this is not anything to do with the Build Back Better bill that has been in Congress. This is specifically an appropriation from the American Rescue Plan to US EDA, and one of their 6 programs that they've put together to administer competitive grants to communities and regions and states to build more resilient economies. And the Build Back Better Regional Challenge is really their flag of a program of the 6. So $1 billion of the $3 billion is going towards Build Back Better. So I'll describe a little bit more about the opportunity and then get into more details about where we are right now in our application. So we learned of this opportunity back in late July. The notice of funding opportunity was released in late July of 2021. And Greater MSP went to work in reviewing that funding opportunity and talking to partners about if this was something that was an opportunity for Greater MSP to take a leadership role and in actually applying on behalf of the region. And through a lot of communication and meeting with different partners about the opportunity, we made the decision to apply and be an applicant. And through a lot of analysis that had been done historically at Greater MSP around our region's sectors of strength, and conversation again with many partners about the opportunity, we selected the bio-innovation cluster as our opportunity to grow. So Build Back Better is about investing in projects that will transform and really catalyze a growing, emerging industry cluster for the future. So they look to regions to propose what is your region's industry that is going to really guide job growth, capital investment, and really drive equity for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And propose to us what that looks like. What is your vision for the cluster? And what projects would you want EDA to invest in that if invested in and implemented simultaneously would really activate the cluster? So it's really about activating the cluster, this funding opportunity, and looking towards the future for building more resilient economy. So our concept proposal in phase 1 was submitted in October, and we learned in December that we were a finalist moving to phase 2. So you see here 60 regions that were invited to phase 2 of this opportunity, but there were 529 applications that were submitted in phase 1. So we were one of 529 that were evaluated, and then 60 of those 529, the dots that you see on this map, were invited to put forth a phase 2 application. So that's what we're working on right now. So we're taking the concept that we proposed in phase 1 and now really building a much more comprehensive proposal of how we're going to implement, or how we would implement, the projects if we received funding from EDA. Here's just another view of what that looks like. 50 to 60 regions originally proposed by EDA that would be invited to phase 2. All of those regions, the 60 regions that were invited to phase 2, received $500,000 technical assistance grants to help them prepare the phase 2 application. So when we were notified in December that we were invited to be a finalist, Greater MSP was awarded $500,000 in technical assistance funding to help prepare the application and mature the cluster. We are now working on that phase 2 application. As you see, 20 to 30 of the phase 2 applications, so about half of those finalists, will be awarded funding from EDA. The deadline for phase 2 is March 15th, so we're moving very quickly. They'll have until September of 2022 to identify and award the 20 to 30 regions, and each region will be awarded anywhere from $25 million up to $100 million to implement their projects. You see here 25 to 75 million up to 100. We understand that the regions that will be prioritized for that 100 million are coal communities, and so it may be more likely that 75 is the maximum that we would receive, but that is the range that EDA provided. And EDA historically has funded certain types of activities, or they spell out their eligible activities very succinctly on their website and through their notices of funding opportunities. But generally, they fund infrastructure, workforce development, training, entrepreneurship, construction projects, so buildings and roads and other types of physical infrastructure. They also, I'm sorry, I have a friend here visiting with me, a 7-year-old friend, but they also invest in planning and strategic development. So there's a lot of different projects that we have proposed, and I'm going to show you in a moment, that fall within those categories. These are the 8 projects that were proposed as part of the phase 1 application and that we're working on in phase 2. On the left, you see 4 different construction projects, and on the right, 4 non-construction projects. So it is a balance between those physical physical construction funded projects, which are, as you would expect, more costly. But then for really critical synergistic projects that are going to advance the cluster forward. I'll walk through these in just a moment. I want to highlight for you that 2 of the construction projects are located in the city of St. Paul. The 2 construction projects in St. Paul are the University Enterprise Labs expansion, so existing facility in the Midway area near the 280 interchange university, where there's an existing incubator and accelerator space where they would be looking to expand that space. They have a long-going wait list to occupy that space and grow. The second construction project in the city of St. Paul is in downtown St. Paul, and this is the existing Fairview St. Joseph's Hospital campus. And the city, Fairview has really imagined and created a vision for this space that aligns really closely with bioinnovation, and they have identified the reuse of the space as a bioinnovation hub. And this is in addition to the already announcements that they've made that part of that hospital campus will be used for services to support the community nearby the hospital campus. There are 2 other physical construction spaces, one in the East Gateway site near the stadium at the University of Minnesota, another innovation space, and then a biomaker training center really focused on targeting high school students and early career folks to give them exposure to bioinnovation career opportunities. And that site is located in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood, really focused on targeting kids who live in that neighborhood, and we think would be a great pilot for future sites that are very similar. The non-construction projects are really focused on talent development, pipeline development. So we have a training project. We have a project that is a consortium of our higher education colleges and universities on curriculum development, a project focused on ag innovation and market development within ag. And in this final project, the one that Greater MSP will actually own, which is really building the strategic brain of the cluster and making sure that we have staff and funding to develop strategies that will implement the cluster over the long term and continue to support development of bioinnovation beyond the EDA investment. All right, this is just a fun day with my son hanging out. So what I wanted to really make sure you guys know before I would open it up for questions is that, our 8 project teams that you see represented here, they are very busy right now preparing their applications. We have created a core team utilizing that technical assistance funding. We've set up a core team of consultants and contractors who are working to develop this application, complete the targeted analyses that are going to be needed to really build the overall vision and narrative and overarching narrative for the cluster. But each of these teams are incredibly busy in this very moment working on their individual projects, making sure they meet eligibility requirements of EDA, and making sure that there's synergy across the 8 of them. That's going to be really important. So they've engaged contractors and consultants of their own, and they're busy in the moment getting that completed. One of the requirements for this EDA opportunity is that each project has to have secured 20% of their total project cost from local match. So they have to come up with 20% of the project cost, and EDA will bring 80% of the project cost. By the deadline, March 15th, they will need to have come up with a stack of funding sources that can meet that 20% match. And we understand both the University Enterprise Labs expansion project and the Fairview Bioinnovation Hub project are actively looking at their options for local match support. Greater MSP, as the lead institution on this opportunity, is making all kinds of partnership connections for them. Funding can come from a lot of sources. It can come from, as a cash contribution, can come from really any entity, public sector, private sector, philanthropy. But there are also in-kind contributions that can be made that make up local match. One example would be, equipment donations or personnel costs, time spent against the project being implemented. So they're actively working through that and figuring out how they're going to come up with their local funding support, while also making sure that they have all of the requirements of EDA for an eligible project. And for anyone who's in the development space, you understand there's a lot to do as it relates with federal funding to, getting environmental review and assessment completed, getting all those competitive procurement processes in place to secure preliminary estimates for design engineering. So there's a lot of work they have underway, but we're really excited about this opportunity. It's just a huge effort in this moment. I was just presenting to the Greater MSP board that we probably have about 60 or 70 people right now, every day, working on this Build Back Better application to get us ready for a competitive proposal by March 15th. So at that point, I would welcome your questions. I would also just share that Director Goodman and her team, the City of St. Paul, Ramsey County, so many of our partners in the East Metro have been engaged through phase one as we conceptualize this opportunity, and have really lent their support and partnership as we develop the proposal into phase two here. So thank you for the time to walk through it, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have any immediate questions? I do have a few questions. First of all, thank you for joining us. I'll start by saying I really appreciate that the focus on this is on workforce. I've said it for a long time that our region and our state's not going to compete based on tax breaks or things like that, but based on the quality of our workforce. So investing in our workforce is something that will make us the most competitive. And so I appreciate that the focus is on this. I do have a few questions though. Is St. Paul going to be committed to any of that 20% matching money? Are we going to be obligated to it, or is it specifically just those nonprofits or for-profit institutions?
At this point, there hasn't been a formal ask for financial support from the City of St. Paul. I think that for these two particular projects, there is likely interest. And, I'm here to share generally how there's need, but I'm not here to make a formal ask on behalf of either of those projects. We're learning every day about different kinds of creative sources for funding support. And so, I guess the opportunity here is for St. Paul to think about what could be a financial commitment to participate. But I don't have a formal request for you. And, I think I would just ask for your consideration and exploring that as a way to participate in the Build Back Better opportunity.
Okay, maybe just asked in a different way. If we were awarded the grant, is St. Paul and the other local governments that are part of the Greater MSP partnership, will we be obligated to find that 20%?
No, we're obligated to find the 20% if we're going to be competitive. We need to show that there are available unencumbered dollars that meet the 20% match. So if we are awarded, we are obligated, but Greater MSP Partnership is not individually obligated overall for all of these projects. Each of the project teams would be obligated to secure the funding and make sure that it's available.
Okay, and then the project teams are the individual institutions, none of them are governmental entities?
That's correct. Yeah, none of the eight projects are led by a government entity. So for University Enterprise Labs, it is University Enterprise Labs that is the applicant. As a nonprofit, they are eligible. In fact, all 8 of these projects are led by nonprofit entities. So any kind of financial support from the public sector would be part of the request from these nonprofit entities to secure a funding element within that local match. So yeah, right now there's no public sector leader of any of these 8 projects who is obligated to identify that funding availability.
Okay. And the second thing, when I read about this in the newspaper, I think it was about a month ago, it made me think of the Central Quarter Anchor Partnership, which has been a successful partnership that jobs, community partnership that we've had, I think, almost for a decade. Have you guys been in contact with them? Are we in alignment? As someone who's been around for a while, I've noticed we oftentimes recreate the wheel sometimes when not necessary, but have you been in partnership with the Central Quarter Anchor Partnership?
So I haven't heard that specific naming. I know there's the Central Cities Initiative, which may be similar, that had been through Greater MSP, which was really an alignment of Minneapolis and St. Paul. But what you're referring to may be different. I'm not sure if I'm not certain, again, to your point, like if there's been naming changes or not. But we have been actively talking about this opportunity with both the cities of St. Paul and Minneapolis, with the University of Minnesota as a very strong partner in developing this and thinking through how these projects connect through this innovation corridor that we think about from the University of Minnesota to the Capitol along the Green Line with great connectivity. So we've referred to this opportunity with these physical construction projects as really being along this innovation corridor that does, go from the university's West Bank all the way to the Capitol in downtown St. Paul.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Great. Director Goodman, do you have anything to add on this?
I've nothing to add, just other than I'm really appreciative of Amanda and her leadership, and I'm certain it was like herding cats, getting all the entities and all the information together. The timeline was ridiculously, can you hear me? The timeline was ridiculously fast to put the initial application together, and she did a really excellent job. So just appreciative of her work. We will continue to communicate with you all as we work with the two projects, the construction projects in St. Paul. As mentioned, we have not had a formal ask for any kind of financial support. That could happen, and that would be something that would come to this body for consideration.
Great. Thank you, and thank you for joining us, Ms. Taylor. I hope that your symptoms stay mild and everyone in your house stays healthy. And
well, I'm nice and warm in my McAllister Groveland neighborhood home. So happy to be a St. Paul resident and happy to be here with you all.
Great. Thank you very much, and please keep us posted as this moves along.
Right. Great. Thanks all. Bye-bye.
All right. And did you have anything more to add on that item?
Chair Tolbert, I have no further update today. We can move on to the other agenda items.
All right. We'll go back to number 1.
Item number 1, Resolution 22124, reservation of year 2022 low-income housing tax credits for the Treehouse Housing Development, District 15, Ward 3.
Director Goodman.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert. Commissioners, this item is in regard to the reservation of $831,754 in 2022 low-income housing tax credits for the Treehouse Housing Development. In April of 2021, this body approved changes to the Minneapolis-St. Paul Housing Finance Board's 2022-2023 low-income housing tax credit procedural manual and the Qualified Allocation Plan, or QAP. In Oklahoma, we called that the QAP. The changes to the QAP were aimed at better serving the lowest income residents in our community and included the award of additional points for deeper affordability projects at or below the 30% AMI and 50% AMI affordability levels. The HRA received 2 applications for this round, the Treehouse Project and the Mary Hall Project. Pursuant to the QAP selection and preference priorities, the Treehouse Project scored the highest. The scoring breakdown is outlined in your packet. Based on this scoring, staff recommends that the HRA Board approve the reservation of these credits for the Treehouse Project. A bit about the project: it will be a new construction multifamily rental project, creating 36 units of affordable senior housing. 7 units will be reserved for formerly homeless seniors. The unit mix is currently planned as 15 efficiency units affordable to households at 30% of AMI, 12 one-bedroom units affordable to households at 30% of AMI, and 9 one-bedroom units affordable to households at 50% of AMI. Both of these were great projects, so I did some checking, and I'm told that that Minnesota Housing has given us word that they are funding the Mary Hall project with their credits. Just so you know that, Mary Hall will be fully funded, assuming they also receive the Section 8 project-based vouchers that they are requesting from the Public Housing Authority. If that were not to happen, there could be a gap, in which case they could apply potentially for our 30% AMI funding, or there may be other sources. So the other project seems to be in pretty good shape, just so you know that as well. So the action request today is the approval of the reservation of the $831,754 in credits for the Treehouse project, and staff recommends approval of the item. Interim Housing Director Joe Musoff is here if you have additional questions. And that is all I have.
Great. Thank you. Any comments or questions? Director Prince.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert. My only question is, and I probably should know this, but I'm assuming this is a 9% project?
Yes.
Okay. And Trellis is not a familiar name to me, but are they a nonprofit?
Trellis is, I'm going to ask Interim Director Musoff to discuss the developer. I'm not familiar with them either, just largely because I'm new here and I haven't worked with them before. I guess I'm not new, much new. I've been here a year and a half now, but I haven't worked with this team yet. I think you have to go to the.
If you want to come up to the,
Yep. Oh,
the
you're the
standing spot.
same. Here. Oh.
Chair Tolbert and Commissioner Prince, I'm sorry, I'm not as familiar with them as well. I'm also new to it. So sorry, I can follow up with you.
Yep. We can get you more information.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for me?
No. Great. Any other comments or questions?
I
Director
suppose, I guess the thing is, it's not that they scored well, and it's great to hear that Mary Hall is going to be done by MHFA. I think just when we see a new developer's name, and I was thinking that it was another developer who had renamed themselves. So I don't recall, but I trust that we've done all our due diligence
Yep.
and that
I will
this
add,
is a great
Director
project.
Prince, it's been a while since I met with them, but I met with them because this is in Ward 3, and they've also gone to the District Council, and they're a local developer, is what I remember, and I don't remember the exact details of their whole organization, but they were legitimate, and I know
Yeah.
Director Schuckman thought that they were very good developers. That's who I worked with on this, so, or former director, excuse me.
Yep. And Chair Tolbert, Councilmember Prince, or Commissioner Prince, there are requirements for the project to have its ducks in a row, and they go through a process of qualification just to be eligible for consideration.
Great.
If that's helpful
Great.
information.
Thank you.
I'm assuming there's no one here from Trellis? Great.
What?
I will say this is a really good project. I probably know it a little bit more intimately than some just because of where it's located and the services that they're going to be joining with another organization that's right next to it. And to get more of this very deeply affordable housing in our Highland Park neighborhood is fantastic. It's for people, it's just down the block from the JCC on St. Paul Avenue and a cliff. If you kind of look between McDonald's and where the JCC is, it's going to be a great location and great addition to the community. And I also have to add, I don't know if we've had this in the past, but 30 years that this will be for this income level, I believe is what it said, which is quite a bit longer than we used to have. We've pushed that for a while now. When I was first on the council, I think we were back at 15 years was kind of the standard, and so to get up to 30 is a big victory for the housing team. So thank you guys for pushing that. It's a long time. So, any other questions or comments? Oh, Commissioner Taus.
Thank you, Chair Tober. Yeah, I think this is a great project. It's in an area that continue to need.
Go a little closer.
Thank you, Chair Tober. This is a great project. It's in an area that needs more affordable housing and sustaining more affordable housing. And I really like the name, Treehouse. It's it brings back a lot of memory but this is really good for the city, so I'm going to be in support of it.
Great. Well, if no further questions, I'll take that as a motion from Commissioner Tao. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 2, Resolution 22125, resolution approving guidelines for the HRA Business Assistance Fund citywide.
Director Goodman.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert. Commissioners, for this item, Economic Development Director Martin Chico will be providing a staff report.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Might want to go a little
It's
bit
been so
louder.
long.
Yeah.
Get up a little bit. So thank you, Chair Tolbert, Commissioners. We came in early December and presented some draft guidelines as a report to you, if you recall, and we had some discussion at that time. Since then, Annie Byrne from our team and Jenny Wolf and myself have been trying to refine the guidelines, and now we're coming back today to present a draft of guidelines that we would like adopted for the Business Assistance Fund. As you know, the Business Assistance Fund has been operating for many, many years without any clear guidelines, except for perhaps that it was always viewed as our funding source of last resort. And you'll see from the guidelines here that we're still trying to treat it in that form, but now we have much more specific guidelines in place. So the reason for doing guidelines in this program are, one, just to have more consistency in its application. It also allows us to promote it and advertise it, which I think is something that the board wants us to do. And then thirdly, it allows us to evaluate and make recommendations based on a clear set of criteria. So good all around. So I'll just quickly go through the guidelines. This was passed out to you previously, and I assume you'll have questions and want to discuss, but I'll just tick off the basics here. First of all, for an eligible business for this program is a for-profit business. It can be new, we'll fund startups, or it can be an existing business. Almost any use is eligible, so building improvements, equipment purchase of property. We'll do working capital out of this. Obviously, it still has to be a term loan, but we do working capital and professional fees that are in conjunction with the project. So a lot of different uses are eligible, as opposed to, let's say, our STAR program, which has to be a capital project only. So out of this program, we can fund projects that might not fit some of our other funding sources. When I say it's a funding of last resort, one of the criteria will be that we will require applicants to demonstrate that they have sought full funding from other private sources or other sources in general, haven't been able to meet all of their funding needs. There is a gap, and that's why they're coming to us. And then internally, when we get a request like this, if we can find another more appropriate city source, we would generally recommend that. Because again, this is very flexible money, and it's limited. So unlike STAR and some of other sources, it doesn't necessarily regenerate itself. So we'll always look to see if we can fill the gap in other ways. Ultimately, for recommendation, there has to be a public purpose that is met. So creation of new jobs would be one public purpose that would qualify an applicant. And then beyond that, if they don't have new job creation, and a lot of projects that we do don't necessarily have new jobs that are being created, there has to be a benefit to the community in at least one of the following ways. Positive tax base impact. So I think we would consider any capital project to have a positive tax impact. So if it's a capital project, it's eligible. Renovation of vacant building and multi-tenanted space, again, that's a capital project. Investments in low and moderate income areas. So if your project is in a low mod income area, that in itself probably makes you eligible. And then lastly, and this is maybe the most broad category, investments to meet documented, underserved, or unserved community needs. So if your project is doing something that the community needs, you're eligible from a public purpose standpoint. This fund is for loans, it's not grants. So we have certain financing terms that we would recommend as part of the guidelines. First of all, we want an owner of a project, a business owner, to have some skin in the game. So we're expecting there to be equity. So at least 10% of the project cost should come from the owner. Now, equity can take a lot of different forms, of course, but we want the owner to have equity in the project of at least 10%. All city financing, so this might sometimes be combined with STAR money or other city sources, but we're saying that we want to limit the totality of all city funding sources in a given project to no more than 50%. So we want to have at least one-to-one leverage, like our STAR program, for example, in any project that we recommend. We're recommending a maximum loan size of $150,000. And then this is going to be term debt. And so similar to our STAR program, we actually modeled the recommended term would be an 8-year term at 3%. Obviously, I think we want to be flexible when needed, but just like our STAR program, that would be sort of the out-of-the-chute sort of recommended terms for a deal that comes forward. And then like any loans we make from the city, we're going to require security interest in anything we can get, any business assets we can get, a mortgage if the applicant owns property, and a personal guarantee. So that'll be required for all loans. But of course, we can be and would normally expect to be subordinate to other private debt that is in the deal. So those are the guidelines. Our current guidelines for approval are that anything over $50,000 comes back to the HRA board for approval. Executive director under our current guidelines has authority to approve less than $50,000 at her discretion. So I think that's a summary of the guidelines, and I'm open to any questions.
Commissioner Naker.
Thanks, Chair Tolbert, and thanks so much, Mr. Schickel. I appreciate the having guidelines. I think it is really important, and I know your team has put a lot of thought into this, so thank you. I have two questions, and I know I sent these to you in advance, and you had provided some answers, but I wanted to raise them with my colleagues and hopefully talk about them today, too, because I know that conversation will be helpful to you. First, I recognize the value of limiting the city's liability and making sure that applicants have looked for any other sources of funding before coming to us, and that we should be the lender of last resort. But the cap of 50% city involvement, I could see a situation in which a business owner genuinely can't get other investors for whatever reason, and that's why they're approaching the city. And I would hate to not be able to help those who are really in the greatest need of our resources because we have this arbitrary 50%. And the other place where I don't want to impose an arbitrary limit is on the total amount, the $150,000. I recognize that can come back to us for an exception to be made, but I would rather than saying there's a strict cap and then making exceptions to it, I would rather say this is the typical range of these grants to give people a sense of where we want them to fall. And then if somebody comes in above that, we're not making an exception to a hard and fast rule, we're just giving it consideration. I think we would do that anyway, and so again, it's just how we're phrasing it and whether we look like we're constantly making exceptions to a cap or just making a grant at a higher level than our normal range.
Thank you. If I may add, because this is right along the lines, I was thinking myself, and I didn't do this ahead of time, but that both the 150, I hadn't thought of the 50%, but we just say it's suggested rather than maximum, just to, because I agree with you. We want people to come in below that, but there's always going to be an exception, and I think the suggestion so that people would still consider applying and don't just get turned away. And I talked to Attorney Niblick, and he said that if we make that as part of our amendment, they can correct it on the board report. So, sorry, I maybe cut you off, Director Schickel.
No, I'm just straining to hear it, so I'm
okay.
sorry.
Sorry, I'll talk louder.
Talk louder. So, Chair Tolbert, just so I'm clear, so we can, from the floor, we can amend to add suggested cap and suggested on both of those. Is if we just add the word suggested, is that what we're saying? Yeah, I think the suggestion will be when we'll have Commissioner Naker make the motion, and the motion would be included with suggested 50%, suggested $150,000 cap.
And I'd probably not say suggested cap, but if I can make a friendly amendment to the friendly amendment, a suggested range.
Yeah.
perhaps? And I would defer, I don't know if a range is maybe 25 to 150 or something that makes sense to you, but.
I hate doing this at the table, but
Commissioner Bremmel.
I liked what you said initially, the typical range, as not even like suggested. It's like, this is what we typically do. And because I agree, it gets at what we're trying to accomplish, but gives some latitude for people to be thinking about it. So
I'll accept that as a friendly.
Got that, Mr. Niblick?
Chair Tolbert, Commissioners. Chair Tolbert, Commissioners, based upon the conversation, I propose recommended language be added to the first resolved clause of the resolution that says at the end of report, comma, with the amendments of a targeted range of 25 to 50% subsidy and a targeted of no more than $150,000 in total loan amount.
Commissioner Naker?
I don't know that the targeted 150 is getting at the idea of the typical range. That may not be legal jargon enough, but.
Is there a typical range we would like to suggest? That way we have some level of specificity. And again, we can always draft it to where there can be exceptions made, but I think having a range would be preferable. That way we're staying within a range as opposed to making one-off exceptions.
We could also work on this a little bit. We don't have to pass these rules today by any means, so you could take it back and we could look at something and just approve it next meeting too. I hate writing stuff on the fly, and I would hate to make someone else do it.
Chair Tolbert, that's fine if you'd like to. We can do a little bit more wordsmithing. I think it is helpful to give some guidelines so that people kind of know what to expect. And I will say that anything smaller than, much smaller than 15 or 20,000, the administrative lift becomes really burdensome for the amount of lending. So maybe trying to set a typical minimum of 20 or 25, and we could go less if we needed to, and a maximum of whatever you're comfortable with.
So maybe, since it's just suggested anyway, typical range of 20 to 150,000.
Okay, that works. And then we'll just bring this back next meeting and finalize it with the wordsmith. Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
Do we need to vote on that motion?
I think we'll just lay it over
okay.
for a new one for next week, or bring it again anew. Commissioner Tao, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert. Martin, thank you for the guideline presentation. I'm just curious, what is your timeline, and how is this program being marketed so that we have a diverse range of recipients? And then, is this a first come, first serve, or are we being intentional about diversifying the recipients of the loan?
So I'll go reverse order. So I would say this is a rolling thing. It's first come, first serve. Our intention is to, I think we want to be a little deliberate about marketing it so that we don't suddenly get flooded with applications. I'm not expecting that, although it depends on how the guidelines, if the guidelines are such that we might fully fund a project at 3% and there's no equity or whatever, we might get more than if we have rules. But I think we want to get it up on our website. And I think we want to market it to banks and lending institutions in the neighborhood. So, NDC, the nonprofit institutions that have programs as well. So that hopefully when they have deals that they can't fully fund, that they look to us as a source. So I think that's where we would start. And I think you had one other question. And as far as, so we don't have we haven't been actively marketing it yet because, of course, we're waiting for the adoption of guidelines. I think as soon as those are adopted, we can quickly turn that around and get them public. And I think then we will sort of start up again. We have at least one project potentially sort of on hold for the moment until these have been adopted. But yeah, the sooner the better, frankly. I think there's going to be a market for this program.
So does that mean like next month, or 2 weeks from now, or?
What I'm hearing is that we're coming back, so in 2 weeks, I assume, and if it's passed then that's February, so I would say by the end of February, it's reasonable that we can have the word out. I mean, that's just getting the word out. Once we have guidelines in place, anything that's in our docket, we can start working on immediately. We're not going to wait, but I would say by the end of February, word should be able to be, put out on our website and via our partners.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would just emphasize that if this is first come, first served, then we should do a really good job of marketing it out so that the entire business community, especially people of color owned business, have a chance to apply for this too.
Yeah, and you'll see that in the resolution that's following this, it's actually an opportunity to leverage some EDA dollars to bolster the amount of funding we have available by a considerable amount. And so hopefully then it'll be less likely that we'd suddenly run out, quickly or something like that. So.
Thank you.
Great. Any other comments or questions? I'll echo what Commissioner Tao said. I think the more widely we can advertise this, even if it means a lot of applications, I think that's a better problem to have than not enough, is to have a lot of applications. So the more we can get it out there, the better. Great. So we'll lay this over until the next meeting, which would be 2 weeks from today, February 9th. And we'll have the language properly there and we can move it on then. So thank you very much. Oh, a motion to lay over till February 9th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The item is laid over. Item number 3, Resolution 22126, resolution approving and authorizing the submission of a grant application to the Economic Development Administration Agency of the United States Department of Commerce for the American Rescue Plan Act Economic Adjustment Assistance Notice of Funding Opportunity, requesting $1.25 million to capitalize on a revolving loan fund with support from the HRA's Business Assistance Fund citywide.
Director Goodman?
Thank you, Chair Tolbert. Commissioners, for this item, Senior Project Manager Annie Byrne will be providing a staff report.
Hello, Chair Tolbert, Commissioners. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Annie Byrne. I'm a Senior Project Manager on the Economic Development Team of PED, and I will be reporting on this resolution. I did make a couple bullet points I put on this screen. If we can show it, great. If not, no big deal. I just want to review what's presented in the board report and then be open to questions.
Do you have it on that computer there, what you're trying to share?
I don't have it digitally.
Oh,
They
it's
told
right
me.
here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh. So I have it.
So media services, if we have the up top camera.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I was talking to media services if they can turn on that camera.
Yeah, I was told just to put it on there and it will appear. But it's just a few highlighted bullets, really not necessary. So first, I just want to start with a little bit of background. You heard a little bit about EDA before, but it is a new funding source for St. Paul. So EDA is the Economic Development Administration, is a federal agency within the Department of Commerce that's really responsible for promoting innovation and economic competitiveness. They do this by providing multiple different funding sources. We heard about the Build Back Better challenge. They came up with several new funding programs with the American the American Rescue Plan Act. One of their existing funding sources was allocated $500 million, and that is the Economic Adjustment Fund, the Economic Adjustment Assistance Fund, which we are seeking to apply for funding for a revolving loan fund. This fund is their most flexible funding source. They do a range of construction and non-construction. Flip it up.
There we go.
There it is. Trying to make it level. Okay. So yes, they do a range of construction and non-construction programs, including revolving loan funds. On average, they fund about 6 revolving loan funds a year. And so this is an exciting opportunity because the American Rescue Plan Act changes the guidelines which make us eligible. Typically, we wouldn't be eligible because we wouldn't meet the economic hardship criteria for this fund, but through the ARPA funding, all jurisdictions are eligible. And in addition to the eligibility, they also amended the match requirements. So typically, applicants are required to match the request by 50%, and now it's just 20%. So EDA will provide 80% of the request, and the applicant just provides 20%. So it's a very high leverage opportunity for us. So our proposal is to submit an application for revolving loan fund dollars of $1.25 million, which will go into the Business Assistance Fund, and we're asking for a commitment of the 20%, which will be $250,000 of the Business Assistance Fund to secure this. We will have, so this coincides very nicely with the development of these guidelines, so we'll really be able to take advantage of this opportunity to market it and promote it. Like Martin talked about, we see a real opportunity to reach out to banks in the lending community to let them know this resource is available. We see good demand from them. We've done some research to confirm that, yes, this is needed. We have a total of 3 years to allocate the $1.5 million in this revolving loan fund. And yeah, that's just I wanted to give an overview and open it up for questions.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioner Naker?
Thanks, Chair Tolbert, and thanks so much for this presentation. Just wondering how quickly we would expect, if we're successful in this grant application, to actually get the funds.
Sure. So, Chair Tolbert, Commissioner Naker, the target time frame from EDA is to let applicants know within 60 days. Our representative emphasized that's the target. And then they have to release, the award needs to be made by September. That's the deadline to release the ARPA funds.
Great. Any other comments or questions, Director Goodman?
Chair Tolbert, I don't have anything to add other than just here for your approval to submit the application. If not much to lose, maybe something to gain. So. Great. The deadline is looming, which is why we brought it so quickly.
Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate you following the law and bringing the application to the to the proper governmental body ahead of time. So thank you for that. I do think it's great. I know we always want to bring outside money in, but I'll continue to say this: we continue to apply for outside money, but we got to make sure to, when we do get it, to get it out the door to help the relief that it's for. So I think if we are successful, hopefully, let's make sure that we're ready to allocate that money right away. But I think it's a good grant, and I'll take someone want to make the motion to apply. Commissioner Brenmon, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted.
And I believe that brings us to the end of the agenda. So thank you very much. We are adjourned. The gavel. It's fun.
You see in your trash the most. So, for example, I mean, this is we're the largest organic food distributor in the Midwest. So we go through a lot of product here. But in a restaurant, you can really streamline your kitchen with organics. I mean, that's literally mostly what's in people's trash is food. And because we burn our trash in Ramsey County, the wet food is problematic in the incinerator.